And a good morning, Birds fans. It's a game day Thursday edition of Birds 365 with your Mac and Mac guys, McMullen and McDonald. Johnny Mac, when last we spoke, you got out a little early yesterday to talk to Nick Sirianni, or at least listen to Nick Sirianni. Did you get a question in yesterday?
Yeah, I got one in.
So you actually talked to Nick Sirianni. That's a good thing. A little later than scheduled, right? You got out early and then Nick showed up late.
Yeah, of course he showed up late. He tends to show up late. It's like the president, he arrives when he arrives.
When he darn well feels like. When Nick Sirianni eventually showed, did you get the word that early that the Eagles were going to be handicapped with how many defenders they're going to be missing because of injury for this game today?
No, that's the Eagles always wait till the last injury report. Typically it's on a Friday afternoon because of the early game. Yesterday was the designation day. They always wait to the very end. He thinks it's a competitive advantage. Nobody cares, but Nick cares. And if it helps him, so be it. He thinks it's an advantage. I mean, I've been telling people all week, Bradbury's not playing. He can't get through the protocol. Minnesota knows that. It's not a competitive advantage. Now, maybe you can argue Fletch kind of let it out to reporters that he was going to be able to play. So I still expect him to play. So he didn't have any control over that one. The two were Gainwell and Blankenship. And, you push it as far as you can, but I don't think that's going to affect the game planning for Minnesota, because just like the game planning for Philadelphia, this is a DNA game, Jody. There's not a lot of game planning. You don't have time. You can't practice. All the coaches said it. I asked Brian Johnson earlier in the week. You got to rely on what you are on these short weeks, more than, pointing out difficulties and things like that. And that's why I really favor the Eagles in this game, because what they are is strong up front, and that's strength against weakness for versus Minnesota.
All right. Well, I guess I'll play devil's advocate here, because I am worried about this game. Because, John, what were the two positions that we thought coming into the season, offense or defense? We'll put special teams aside, but offense or defense, two positions that we were most questioning about the Philadelphia Eagles before the year started?
Running back and linebacker, or safety, if you want to throw in.
Yeah. I was going linebacker and safety. You want to put running backs third? I'm good with that, because I'd probably say that'd be number 3. But if I was putting them in order, it would have been linebacker 1, safety 2, running back 3. So if I'm right, and linebacker and safety were their two biggest question marks, they're going to be playing without their best player at that position. Both of the top two positions where you had questions to begin with, Sans Nakobe Dean and Sans Reed Blankenship, they become bigger question marks. That's the dead center middle of the Eagles defense. Now, the two big guys up front were great in week number 1, and you're putting a hell of a lot on those two rookie dogs, or second-year dogs, in Jordan Davis's case, is played for week number 2, because, you need to keep everything behind you out of the middle, because we've got question marks there. They're going with some guys that either haven't proven themselves as Eagles, are question marks, or just might not be that good at those positions this week, John.
No, I don't disagree with that, but I kind of land in the camp. All right, well, tell me how Minnesota is going to take advantage of that. Like, if you can look into Jody Mack crystal ball and say, the Vikings are going to be able to block the Eagles' defensive front, I say, well, I'll tell you, the Eagles are in trouble. I don't think they can. I don't see any way they can. There's not any magic dressing. They're not getting new players. How are they going to block the Eagles' front? If you could tell me how, and you could say they're going to do it, and maybe they have their best game they ever had, and maybe they're on for one night, and then I would agree with you. I'll say, well, then they're in trouble, because Christian Ellis can't deal with TJ Hawkinson. And, whether it's Terrell Edmonds or Sidney Brown or anybody else they throw, even if they want to move Avonte Maddox to safety, they're not going to be able to deal with that receiving group. But I can't see how they can block those guys. I can't see it. I can't even picture it. I can't even formulate it in my head. That's how bad that interior is. We're going to talk to Ben Lieber about it. I'll probably tone it down with Ben. But I mean, it's awful. It's awful, Jody. I don't see how they can block the Eagles' fronts. I just can't even picture it.
Then I know it's just one game, but that's all we have to work with so far here in 2023, right? And yesterday you told me that the Tampa defense was one of the better defenses in the NFL. I don't feel as strongly about Tampa's defense as you do.
I believe I said top 10. I said Patriots top 10, Bucks top 10. I believe they'll both be top 10 defenses.
Okay.
Yeah, I think they're good defensively, not offensively, defensively.
Right. Kirk Cousins threw for 335 last week against
but how many points did they generate? I mean, that's part of the NFL. They're going to get some yards because you can't be, and they're going to get big plays because they have great players. And Jefferson, it starts with Jefferson, but it's also Hawkinson and Osborne and Addison. They're going to make some plays. Mac Jones threw for 300 yards. But how many points did they generate?
Not enough to win the game. I'll give you
that. They didn't even get that.
Kirk Cousins threw a bad pick in the red zone in the second half, which was a backbreaker. And again, as John mentioned, Ben Lieber, former Viking turned reporter in Minnesota, is going to join us in hour number 2. That was the game breaker for me. He's going to throw for a lot of yards. Who's going to be the Eagle that's going to come up with that big pick play? Is it going to be Slay?
Well,
somebody's got to be able to
look at Slay last year. That was the worst game Justin Jefferson has ever had. And it wasn't because of Slay, all due respect to Slay. It was because of the front. It was because Cousins was hurrying. It was because Cousins was throwing the football up. Now, Slay's a big part of it, big playmaker, tremendous. I'm not trying to say he didn't have a good game. He had a tremendous game. But the bigger impact of that was the front and hurrying Cousins up. I think the same thing is going to happen this year. The same thing's going to happen. Even worse because now, look, I'm very high on Jalen Carter. I think anybody who watches this show knows that by now. But the one thing I am interested from Jalen, the thing about the NFL is you have to do it consistently. And he's a very young, potential maturity issues. That's the reason why he was here in the first place, because people were concerned about that. Does he rest on his laurels because he had such a great game? That's something I want to see, because the NFL is about consistency from week to week. The truly great players. So I am interested in that. But even if he doesn't have another great game, you still got Bletch who's going to play. You still have Milton Williams. You still have Jordan Davis. I'm in the old boxing analogy of styles make fights. This looks like a terrible style matchup for Minnesota in my mind. That's why I'm so confident about the Eagles. Now you're talking about move forward. Yeah, then I start to get more concerned as the changes in the styles aren't maybe as advantageous. Not necessarily Tampa, because they're terrible offensively. So I don't know how. I think the Eagles will struggle a little bit against Tampa offensively as they continue to get their footing under them. But I don't think Tampa can score that many points. But we got plenty of time to get to that game.
Right. So let's stick with this one. How many points do you think that the Eagles defense can hold Minnesota to? If they got 17 last week, which is not a hell of a lot, not enough to win the game, how much do you think the Eagles defense, sans Nakobe Dean and sans Reed Blankenship, is going to be able to hold the Vikings to?
I'd say same range, maybe 20, 23, maybe give them an extra 24, maybe give them an extra touchdown. but I think the Eagles will be able to generate some offense. It's interesting because I've said it. If Eagles fans could get the coordinator they want, this would be the guy. I don't know if they know it or not, but if they've watched a lot of Brian Flores. But and this is funny because at the Honest NFL, I give him the credit. Used to work for the Eagles, does a tremendous job breaking down tape and all that stuff. So he told me they used 7 different personnel groupings last week. 7 different personnel groupings for multiple plays on defense. And I asked him, well, how rare is that? Never seen it before. Never seen it before. It's been charting games for, well over a decade. Typically it's 3 or 4. He used 7 different personnel groupings. They were number 1 in the NFL with five-man rushes, blitzes.
Yeah, they blitz
Number one
in the league.
But they were also number 1, get this, with 3-man rushes in the same game. This guy is a mad scientist, but part of it is he knows he doesn't have the personnel. So he's throwing everything at the wall and trying to confuse quarterbacks and trying to do it. So it might be hinky at times. It might get ugly at times because he might guess right and he might have a corner blitz coming, or he might guess right and he drops everybody and they generate a turnover. Who knows? But overall, he doesn't have the personnel. That's why he's doing all this stuff. That's why he's throwing everything at the wall, trying to confuse people. I'd rather have the better players and just, like the Eagles did last year, which fans don't like. Now, I like the mentality because he goes into a game knowing, look, I'm up against it. I'm not just going to sit there like Ed Donatel did last year in the Vikings game and, get beaten to a drum. He's going to try different things to try to slow you down. I like that mentality. But yeah, I mean, it's crazy the stuff he does.
Yeah, I like results. It's great to have a great mentality and a risque mentality and take chances and try and hide stuff with how to play out at the end. You can only do so much. You can only hide deficiencies so much. You can only take chances and do things that people may not expect. If it doesn't work, if the other team is successful against it, even if they didn't see it coming, if they've got a quarterback or a wide receiver makes the right read and adjust, side adjustment, like you're gonna have the greatest plan in the world. The only thing that matters is results.
Now I predicted before the season that Minnesota had 31st defense in the league last year. I said they'd be middle of the road, 15-16. He got the results. Like, that's the mark of a good coach. Like, they're better. They were way better on defense than they were last year. Way better. But to your point about results, about ultimate, then you got to get players.
Right.
Doesn't matter. You got to get players.
They don't have the players yet.
Exactly. But he coaching is a sliding scale. And I'm very comfortable with my prediction after 1 week that they will be middle of the road, 15-16. They're not good enough to be top 10. They don't have enough good players. But with somebody else, and you already saw it, they were 31st. With him, he's going to make them better. And he's a great, and I want to emphasize this, great defensive coordinator. But they don't have the horses. They don't have the horses.
I still think they're going to be bottom third because they don't have the horses, as you just said. I think talent moves the needle more than a coordinator does, and I just think that they're a bad defense. And, oh, by the way, their overall numbers, not bad last week. Their second half numbers, when it counts, Baker Mayfield moved the ball and made plays against them. That's Baker Mayfield. They start facing better quarterbacks. I'm not sure the overall numbers will be as good. At one point, I think Baker, I saw the box score at one point. I think he was 4 of 14 early on in that game.
Yeah, and that's the thing. You tend to settle down. like early, I said, there's going to be some ugly moments because he's going to come out with this weird crap and the Eagles are going to go, what the hell? What is going on? And then he kind of slowed down and figure it out a little bit and it becomes easier. That's where you need players, bottom line. But I mean, this is a team that gave up, 350 yards on it passing. Forget about it. I mean, they're over 400. They gave up 242 yards, Jody. I mean, that guy's to give up 242 yards with that defense, and I get you're a results guy. That's freaking phenomenal, even against Tampa Bay, because they have nothing. They have not. They have Daniil Hunter and a 35-year-old Harrison Smith. They're playing an undrafted kid at middle linebacker this year.
But the Eagles are going to be lesser because an undrafted kid went out. Again, at some point you move off where the guy was drafted. Can he play or can he play? You got to let go of where he was selected or how he was procured.
First year, he's a rookie. He's a rookie. Like, they can't get Lewis Seen on the field. Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah's first draft is just a disaster. First round pick, can't get on the field. Second round pick, Andrew Booth. He's their fifth corner. Third round pick, Brian Asamoah, was supposed to be the starting middle linebacker. Ivan Pace beat him out. Undrafted rookie. Disaster his first draft. Yeah, I mean, but I'm telling you, Brian Flores is tremendous. And you can hear Brian Johnson, Nick Sirianni. They have unbelievable respect for this guy.
Then let me ask you a question. If this guy is as good as you say he is, and I respect him, I think he's a very good defense quarter, maybe not as highly ranked as you have him. Why didn't the Eagles get him this offseason?
Because they don't want to play that defense. I hate the Eagles scheme. I hate it. I say it all the time. People don't listen. The Vikings ran the Eagles scheme last year. They ran the Fangio scheme. They were one of the worst at it, because they had communication breakdowns. This guy's the exact opposite. This guy is the guy that built up. This is the aggressive guy. This is the guy who's trying to dictate. This is the Wink Martindale times 10. And if you go back, and you're a Jets guy, so you should know, I'm not saying he was a successful head coach. That's a different role. But that Miami defense was stinking good because he's going to get more, same as Bill Belichick, like people, and that's who obviously tutored him.
Learned from, yeah.
But he's more aggressive. He's more aggressive than Bill. He's going to make what he has better. And that, to me, is the mark of a good coach. But I'm with you. I want players. I'd love to have players and coaches.
Yeah, that's
kind of players.
That's the nirvana everybody is striving for.
Yeah. But I want players. But yeah, I think this guy is, he's one of the best defensive coordinators in the league. And to do that, and it's a very small sample size, but to do that 1 week with that defense, under 250 yards in this modern NFL, it's not his fault they lost the game. It's the offense's fault. They turned it over 3 times.
Yeah, but again, they did let Baker make some big plays in the second half. If they gave up 250 yards, I bet you the split was like over 150 in the second half, like 100, maybe 91-60. If you're telling me they held them to 250,
yeah, but it's still good, Jody. I mean, at what point do you look at the other side and say, all right, this guy did enough to win. The other side didn't do enough to win. That's how I look at it. I mean, he did it. If you give up 200 NFL game in this era, you did enough to win defensively. Yeah. It's on the other side of the football, and they gave up 95 in the first half. So they were worse in the second half. But I mean, are you going to say, well, you got to give up? You gave up 95 in the first half, so you can only give up 95 in the second half. I mean, the offense lost the football. Now, could they have made a stop? The offense another chance to sputter out and not win the game? Sure. I mean, you can always make an extra play. But I'm saying, if you come out of that game and say, well, he didn't do enough to win, I'm going to disagree with you. I'm going to say the offense didn't do enough to win.
No, I think they lost the game on both halves of the football. Pretty damn close. And going into tonight's game, yeah, I'm more scared about the Viking offense than Flores.
Well, they have better players. They have better players on the offense, but they don't have, they have skill position players. And let's be honest, that's what everybody looks at. And they're excited about skill position players. But why the Eagles have the big advantage is Jason Kelsey and Lane Johnson and Landon Dickerson and Jordan Mailata. And it's boring. It's boring to point out that that's the reason they're going to win the game. Everybody wants to talk about Jefferson and AJ and TJ and Devontae and Dallas Goedert. Can they get the ball to Dallas Goedert? You're going to finally see DeAndre Swift, Landon Dickerson, Jason Kelsey, Jordan Mailata, Lane Johnson. They're going to win the football game. And conversely, Austin Schlottman, Ed Ingram, Ezra Cleveland, they're going to lose the game.
I hope you're only so right about Flores and his defensive expertise. I'm going to believe that the Eagles score more than 18 points on offense than they did last week. Despite Flores' genius status, I think the Eagles will be able to put up more points than they did last week against the genius that is Bill Belichick. All right, he's McMullen on McDonald. Birds 365, Mac and Mac will be joined by Game Day Kratz. Eddie Kratz from Sports Illustrated joins us next.